Religion, the belief in and worship of a superhuman power or powers, especially a god or gods. Ideas about the relationship between science and religion. A particular system of faith and worship. Plural noun, religions. The world's great religions. A pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance. Consumerism is the new religion. Spirituality, the quality or state of being spiritual or of being attached to or concerned with religious questions and values broadly conceived. The term is also frequently used in a non- or even anti-religious sense to designate a preoccupation with or capacity for understanding fundamental, moral, existential, or metaphysical questions, especially regarding the nature of the self, or soul, or person, the meaning of life, the nature of mind or consciousness, and the possibility of immortality. Now notice that the definition of spirituality, according to Britannica.com, could include anti-religious sentiments. So the idea of spirituality isn't confined within the construct of religion. And religion isn't confined to the concept of God necessarily. Consumerism can be a religion. You see these people who can't stop buying stuff, who've got Amazon packages coming in the mail every day. So I want to talk about the difference between religion and spirituality and how they don't always go hand in hand, nor do they have to. Now, I grew up in a household that was very cynical towards religion in general. You could say an atheistic household. And in particular, there was somewhat of a hostility towards Christianity. That sounds odd to me now, thinking back, because at the time, I didn't think that we were being overly hostile against Christianity. I just thought it was common sense. I mean, come on. You've got these TV preachers like Jimmy Swaggart going on TV and just lying to people and crying these crocodile tears and quoting scripture, while this phone number is at the bottom of the screen that they're encouraging you to call and send them money so you can buy yourself a stairway to heaven. I mean, the hypocrisy just seems so obvious on the surface. And because that was my only exposure to Christianity, that and, movies and stuff, I obviously had a very negative view of it, not to mention one-dimensional. One of my favorite movies was Repo Man as a youngster. And in that movie, the punk rock kid, his parents are these hippie burnouts, and the only time he sees them is they're glued to the TV watching some preacher, and their eyes are all glazed over, and they look totally insane out of their minds. So, that was my attitude about religion. It wasn't really informed. It was informed by mainstream media, unfortunately. And in conversations I had with my Jewish friends or my Christian friends, they seemed to be kind of neither here nor there on any of it. The friends that I had, it seemed like they just sort of went through the rituals because that was tradition in their family. I didn't get a sense of any deeper beliefs there. So I think by and large, when we talk about religion, a lot of times we're just talking about tradition. I think there's lots of quote-unquote religious people that aren't really spiritual. You try to get intellectual with them about their beliefs and the scriptures of their beliefs and such, and they're kind of like, I don't know, or they give you some generic answer that obviously was not very thought out. So that bothers me because I think that if you have deep spiritual convictions, you should be able to confidently discuss the basis of those beliefs and how they translate into your everyday world and into your everyday life. To me, that gets into spirituality. That's what spirituality is. Now, the early traditional Jews, the most traditional, seemed to be the Pharisees. And they were nothing if not religious. I mean, they were all about the Ten Commandments and the different laws in the Torah. And it was a constant effort to clarify what the rules are. And these individuals were at odds with Jesus. When Jesus came along, they were directly at odds with one another. And you would think that since these were the high religious figures, that they would get along with him. But in fact, they denied him that he was even the Messiah and condemned him to death. They were the ones who condemned Jesus to death. And if we look at the NIVbible.com, In the years after the temple was rebuilt following the exile, 515 BC through AD 70, scribes and rabbis studied the words of Scripture, interpreting every detail. What kinds of work could be allowed on the Sabbath within the law? For example, according to the law, no work was to be done on the Sabbath, so that meant burdens were not to be carried on that day. So scholars debated what constituted a burden. On the surface, the scribes had good reasons for interpreting the law carefully, since they did not want anyone to break it inadvertently. But their interpretations increasingly emphasized external adherence to the law rather than cultivating an attitude of submission before God. Obeying their own interpretations became a source of pride instead of an expression of love for God. By Jesus' day, the rabbis and scribes had become so strict that they accused Jesus' disciples of breaking the Sabbath because they picked some grain and ate it as they walked through a field on the Sabbath. Jesus' healings on the Sabbath enraged the religious teachers who classified healing as work and therefore prohibited it. He revealed the rabbis' hypocrisy with his response. Then he said to them, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath." God had given the law to encourage the Israelites to love him and to love others. He had never prohibited doing good on the Sabbath. The Pharisees acted as if God had created people so that he would have someone to keep the Sabbath. But Jesus clarified that God had given the Sabbath as a gift to the people he had created. Now these Pharisees of Judea that were condemning Christ and wanted to see him face capital punishment for their perceived crimes that he has committed, they coexisted with the pagan Romans under the Roman Empire. This is before Catholicism. This is when the Romans were a pagan society. So they didn't care about they didn't relate to the Pharisees' problems with Christ. They just saw civil unrest and they wanted to deal with it. So they sent their governor, Pontius Pilate, out to sort of investigate it. And according to the Gospels, as I understand it, Pontius Pilate didn't see the crime. He was like, "I don't know what you people are freaking out about." But to appease the masses, he went ahead and said, "Okay, well, fine. You want him dead, we'll crucify him. If that's what you want, I'll sign the decree or whatever, we'll do it, and I'll wash my hands of it." And that's where the phrase, washing your hands of something, that's where it comes from. You're done with something. You don't want to deal with it anymore. So it's just interesting to note that it seems to be religious fanaticism that Christ was very much against. And it was, religious fanaticism gone way off the deep end that condemned Christ to death and murdered the very person that Christianity is named after. So I don't know what more needs to be said about the misconception that religion is synonymous with a personal spiritual relationship with God, or that we should throw out an entire belief system based upon the acts of a group that claims to have authority over that particular belief system. And about 300 years later, Emperor Constantine, the Roman emperor, he decided to legalize Christianity, and this was the beginning of the Roman Catholic Church. And he claimed to have seen a sign, the Cairo, and he heard a voice from God that said, "In this sign you will conquer," and this is supposedly how he won these mighty battles and, became a successful emperor for a time. But a lot of people think that this story has been embellished and that it was kind of bullshit and that it was really just about some kind of political move. And if you think about it, if you have a pagan society worshiping multiple gods, worshiping the planets and such, and you observe the power that a messianic figure can have over the people, it doesn't take a genius to realize, well, if I can get people to worship me that way and believe that I am the representative of God on the earth and that I am doing God's work, well, that would give you some sway over the people. Whether it's true or not, you just need them to believe it. So I'm not saying that's what Constantine did, but I'm just saying that this illustrates a perception that we must acknowledge if we are one that wants, if we are one of the twisted individuals, power-hungry individuals that wants to control the entire planet and all the people in it. That's not something that would go ignored. You would say, that would be on the table. Okay, so let's go ahead and, propagandize the public and make them believe that I am the sanctioned representative of God. And in fact, let's just create a whole system here. Call it religion, if you will. A religious, political infrastructure around this entire thing. And let's take this to the next level. Let's see how far we can go with this. Before ending this video, I'm going to segue briefly into some interesting observations I saw yesterday, actually. And I've actually talked about this before. This isn't the first time. But when I go into my YouTube account and I look at the views and I look at these numbers and such, what I'll do is I'll come to this page and I'll hit refresh and I'll look at this number, 26. Say this was last night before I went to bed, and now I'm logging in. I didn't do anything, actually. I just left the page just like this. And I'll come in the next morning and I'll hit refresh, right? Just like that. And then I'll see how many views I have now. And it'll often go up, but sometimes it goes down. And my eyes were not playing tricks with me. It definitely said 29 yesterday, and I went to refresh it and it went down to 26. How does that happen? If someone views my page, how does the page get unviewed unless there's something removing views? So I don't know what that means. Maybe there's I know there's lots of bots and algorithms, and there's all kinds of crazy, who knows? I mean, if somebody out there works for a computer company and understands how this stuff works, I'd love to hear from you, because I'm actually very fascinated by this stuff. Always have been. But yeah, I mean, clearly views were subtracted. So that just makes you wonder, are any of these numbers accurate? I mean, are my likes being subtracted? I don't know. It's not that important to me, but I do like to at least know what's accurate. If I'm getting a certain amount of views or a certain amount of likes or comments or whatever, I like to at least know what's accurate, whether it's, flattering or not flattering. I've got, over 1,000 views on this one here. It seems likely that a certain amount of views are being allowed, obviously. But I don't understand. Is there like a certain percentage of views that are getting suppressed? Like, who decides on that percentage? And what is that number? That's about it for this episode. Thanks for watching. I'm working on a couple longer videos, but it's just taking me some time. So these little off the cuff episodes are good to just get into stuff on a not too deep of a level, but to keep some content out there. Stanley Kubrick, he said that he would ask himself, when he would make his movies, he would ask himself, is it interesting and is it true? Or something like that. So I try to ask myself before I upload any of these, is it interesting and is it true, or is there some truth in it? And if the answer is yes, I feel okay putting it out there. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you all soon.